Hi there, my name is Steve Gearhart and this is the Unagi Observer. Thank you so much for stopping by watching this week's video. We're going to start the Where to Eat for Otakon series because Otakon's a thing this year, even though I don't get to go. Just that's kind of how life and COVID worked out. So, but next year, definitely next year. But that doesn't mean that I can't do a Where to Eat series for Otakon. So here it is. So we're going to do this in 3 parts. The first part is going to be this week, and we're going to talk about safety, well-being, and some certain convention expectations you should have. Then we're going to, in the next following week, we're going to talk about transportation, which is getting in and out of DC and then traveling inside of DC, getting back and forth to the con from your hotel and all that good stuff. And then, of course, the last most important part, which is where to find stuff to eat. While the convention center does have plenty of good options as opposed to the Baltimore Convention Center, there's some stuff around there because, Chinatown's nearby. So, yeah, that's a thing. So anyway, let's get started and let's talk about safety and convention expectations. Let's talk about your safety and well-being while going to Otakon. Now, one of the things I'm not going to talk about right now, I'm going to save it for the end, the last part of the series, and that's going to be talking about COVID-19. I am going to tell you right now to just keep checking the Washington, D.C. city government website, look at their COVID-19 page, and see what they have to say, because that's really how it's going to work. So whatever it says there, those are your guidelines. They can change at any given moment. That's why I'm not going to say anything now, because it could change in the next 5 minutes. It's COVID-19, who knows? But that's where you want to go. You just want to go to that page and just kind of pay attention to it. I would check on it before Otakon about every couple of days just to make sure you're clear on any updates. So we'll leave that towards the end. So let's talk about safety. Let's talk about your well-being as you're going to Otakon, or if your kids are going to Otakon. I know some parents are a little bit concerned about conventions and what they're like and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about some general rules of safety. Now, DC is just like any other city in the world. It has its good points, it has its bad points, it's got its crime, it's got its good stuff, it's got its art, culture, and crappy things. So, just like any other city in the world. So there's some general guidelines that you can follow. I'm sure that there are some professional travelers out there that can probably give you a more comprehensive list. But for our purposes here, I think this will be good enough. And so we'll start with number 1, which is travel in numbers. So basically, whether it's daytime, nighttime, morning, evening, whenever, if you're going from the convention center to your hotel and you got a little bit of a walk, let's say a block, walk with somebody. Walk with somebody who's in your hotel. If you're going there by yourself, make a friend, walk with them, offer to walk with somebody. And because it's that whole safety in numbers type of things. Muggers and people like that generally are opportunistic kind of criminals, which means that they're waiting for you to be by yourself and not paying attention, and that's when they come after you. Now, if you're with somebody, they're far, far, far less likely to do that. So that leads me up to general rule number 2, which is pay attention to what is going on around you. I'm not saying that you have to be like, don't blink and just be in constant state of fear of what's going on around you. No, just be aware of your surroundings. Just like as you're walking down the street, just maybe you look to the side, just take a look at buildings, notice that person in the park over there, things like that. Again, crime is usually opportunistic, and we're finding out from studies from Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and DC that the police have kind of actually looked into this, and they found that most crime is based on when people are by themselves and not paying attention. So if you're traveling in numbers and you're all kind of paying attention to what you're doing and what's going on around you, that gives a mugger a less incentive to go after you. Like if you're walking down the street and you happen to see somebody in a park who's kind of looking at you, believe it or not, just by looking at that person who might be a potential mugger, that person will go, oh, crap, they saw me. So they're going to be on the lookout for me. Criminals are already paranoid, so if they see you seeing them, they're far, far less likely to do anything to you. But again, travel in numbers, pay attention to what's going on around you. Another little thing, another little tidbit is don't give bums anything. Okay, this might sound a little weird, it might seem a little callous, but and also for the fact that DC, the homeless issue in DC is better than it is in Baltimore, but still they're still there. The reason why you don't want to give bums or the homeless money or food or anything like that is there's actually those services, believe it or not, really close by to the convention center, so they have ample opportunities to find shelter, clothing, and food to get the basics to live through the day. So you don't actually need to do that. But God bless you if you feel like you should, but you don't need to, and you really shouldn't. Don't give anybody any money. Don't do that. Because here's the thing about that is that when you give somebody a bum money, believe it or not, you're not going to notice the other bums in the area. But they're going to notice you. If they see you giving somebody money, they're going to make a beeline right for you and go, "Can I have some?" And you're going to say, "No, I just gave my money to that guy." And they go, "But you have money." And they're going to hound you. They are going to hound you. Trust me. Okay? Same thing with food. Same thing with that kind of thing. I know it sounds hurtful and callous to ignore them and to keep walking on, but there are things for them places to go to meet those needs. The other part of this is that when you do give a particular bum money or food, they are going to be on the lookout for you. That means that the next morning when you're walking from the hotel to the con, they're going to be in the same place where the two of you met the day before, and he or she's going to see you, and they're going to go, "Hey, remember me, me, gimme." That's literally going to happen. Okay, so don't give the bums, the homeless, your stuff. If you really want to be helpful, call the 311 down in DC and say, "Hey, there's some homeless guys," and they might send out a van to pick them up, get them out of the heat, maybe take them to a church or a soup kitchen or something. That's the best thing you can do for them. Now, I know you'll probably want to be one of those people that really wants to help, and God bless you. You're a lovely person. Please don't. Please don't, for your own sake. Please, please, please don't do that. So those are some general rules kind of to follow. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. There's one last rule. Very important rule. I can't believe I almost forgot it. And that is, if you don't have to walk at night, don't. It's a city. Things happen at night. And if you have to walk from the convention center to your hotel, and it's longer than, like, say, half a block or across the street, definitely find someone to walk with you. Travel in numbers. Definitely be aware of what's going on around you. At that point, that's actually okay to look around and just be like, okay, nobody mess with me, please. All right. I would rather you get an Uber, a Lyft. I know there's a lot of stuff that goes on until midnight. There's some fun stuff that goes on. Although the convention hours might be closing a little bit sooner, but still it's going to be at nighttime. So invest in an Uber or a Lyft or a cab. If you don't have to walk at night, please don't. Really don't. It's just better for your safety. Okay. So those are the kind of some general rules about how to move around and how to avoid the day-to-day kind of criminal stuff that might happen and irritating things like bumps. So let's go on to things that are more DC centric. Like what are the issues with DC that you're going to have to deal with, unlike here in Baltimore? So I'm going to kind of go through a hodgepodge of things you do and don't have to worry about in terms of crime in Washington, D.C. One of the things I'm going to start off with is homelessness. That is not as big of an issue for convention goers as it was in D.C. as it was in Baltimore. D.C. takes care of its homeless a little bit differently. They're a little bit more proactive. The police officers who are in squad cars or beats will actually get them to move along. You can call 311 and say, "Hey, there's a couple bums hanging out in the park across the street from the convention center. They're kind of harassing people." Generally speaking, somebody's going to show up and do something about it. We're not talking about pepper spray and beating them down. We're talking about getting them to a soup kitchen or a place where they can get shelter, food, and clothing. So I'm not saying that they won't be there and that they won't ask you for money. It's that there won't be as many of them. And they won't be... They're not quite as aggressive as they are in Baltimore. So that's one happy thing you don't have to worry about. And again, just like I said before, don't give them anything. Just, move along. Just keep moving. It's just better for everybody if you do that. Another thing that you should understand about the types of crime that you would have to worry about in DC as opposed to Baltimore is not so much in the immediate area of the convention center, is not so much violent crime, but what I call inconvenience crimes, like pickpocketing. Pickpocketing, believe it or not, in Baltimore, it happens, but it's not as big of a deal as it is in DC. My experience in DC has been that people get pickpocketed a lot. So kind of be mindful of where your stuff is on your person, because that's a thing down there. So that's a thing to watch out for. In terms of violent crime at the convention center, it doesn't really exist. Okay. Just like in Baltimore, the Washington D.C. police, they meet whenever there's a large convention there. The local police, local authorities meet to figure out what's the best way to handle any situations that might arise. Baltimore did the same thing. As a matter of fact, there was actually a ring plan for the Baltimore Convention Center. The Baltimore Convention Center actually had plainclothes, horse, squad, and beat cops whenever Otakon showed up. The DC police pretty much did the same thing, and you have the added benefit of actually having federal agencies nearby that actually have jurisdiction that should something happen and the local forces can't handle it, they'll jump in as well. So there's even an added layer of protection, and it's on the federal level as well. So you don't have to worry about in the convention area, within like a couple block radius of that kind of stuff. That's not something you really need to worry about. Here's the thing that you do need to worry about. Washington, D.C. geographically is a smaller city than Baltimore. A lot of people are surprised by that. It's almost a third smaller than Baltimore, smaller by about 30% in terms of size. In terms of population, D.C. is larger than Baltimore by about 100,000 people, I think. So there's a lot of people in a small area. D.C. has a better transportation infrastructure, particularly metro. Baltimore has one subway line that really doesn't do anything for anybody unless you work at Johns Hopkins. If you don't work at Johns Hopkins, there's no reason for you to ride the subway here. As a matter of fact, in all the years I lived here, I've ridden it once, just once. But the point I'm trying to make about DC is that unlike in Baltimore, where you have to go to places to find the crime, like I would have to go through an entire neighborhood that direction to go to West Baltimore to get into a really bad neighborhood. I would have to travel a bus line that would take 40 minutes to go into certain neighborhoods in East Baltimore, Northeast Baltimore that are really bad as well. In Washington, D.C., it's a matter of minutes. Like, literally, like you're talking 5-10 minutes. D.C., unfortunately, the neighborhoods are really compacted. There's a lot of them, and they're very compacted. And you can be walking through one really nice neighborhood, and then suddenly you'll be in a bad neighborhood. Then you'll be in a good neighborhood. Then you'll be in a bad neighborhood. That's kind of how D.C. works, whereas in Baltimore, there are entire geographical locations which are fine, and then there are places that are not fine. In D.C., it's kind of almost, particularly if you're talking about Southwest quadrant, and we'll talk about quadrants later, you run into that problem. Southeast really has a lot of bad neighborhoods. Northeast, Northwest, not so much. They're pretty good neighborhoods up there. But the point is that it's easy to get to a bad place in DC. It's not that hard. As a matter of fact, I think it's if you go east 2 blocks east or 2 blocks north, you go into a really bad neighborhood. So unlike here in Baltimore, where you actually have to go a number of blocks before you start to really see bad things. And also the crime travels within the city. And what I mean by that is that in Baltimore, a lot of the violence that happens in Baltimore happens in specific neighborhoods and doesn't really come out of those neighborhoods. In D.C., it does. I'm not saying it's going to come to the convention center, because most of the time it won't, but it's something that you can actually see when you're riding in the metro. You can see some very professional people standing right next to very sketchy people. It's just the matter of D.C. So what I'm saying to you is that as you walk around D.C. and you're figuring out where your hotel is in relation to the convention center, and you have to either ride metro to get there, or if it's a simple just across the street walk, these are things to think about as you're figuring out how you're going to get to and from the con. Like if you're in a hotel that's 4 blocks away from the convention center, this is definitely something that you need to look into, because you could be walking next to a park that's a drug park, meaning that that's where people go to, maybe not buy drugs, but that's where they go to do their drugs. And you might be walking past it every day to get to the con. So you might want to investigate whether it's better to get an Uber, to see where the closest metro station is, things like that. So, unfortunately, the crime can be found anywhere inside of DC, whereas in Baltimore, you actually really had to go to specific neighborhoods. So that's a big deal. Another big deal between in DC that you're going to have to really take into consideration is demonstrations and civil unrest. When the Freddie Gray riots happened back in, what was that, 2015, 2016, I was here, I lived here, I was in the middle of it. It actually happened all around me, literally, physically, it happened around me. I actually had to evacuate. But the amount of demonstrations that you see in Baltimore and the amount of civil unrest you see in Baltimore going back 30 years is far less than what you see in D.C. So what does that mean for you? Well, again, these things impact how you move around Washington, D.C. So what you want to do is, again, go to the city website, and they're going to have a page where it lists all of those demonstrations that are happening in that week and the times that they're supposed to happen. These demonstrations are the ones where people got permits, so they're supposed to be there. It's supposed to happen. It's legal for them to be doing a march, or maybe they're on the mall in the middle of the city, or maybe they're occupying a park or something like that. It'll say on this website what's going on. As a result of that, that might mean that there might be certain road closures, that certain metro stops will be closed that day. Maybe they will divert foot traffic, meaning you might have to make a circuitous route to get to where you need to go. So again, if you're staying in a hotel or an Airbnb that is farther out from the convention center, these are things that you want to pay attention to, and that's a daily thing. So I would look at that probably starting about a week and a half before Otakon starts. I would tell you to just pay attention to see what's going on, and you make your decisions as you see fit. In terms of riots and civil unrest, as we know, that's been going on for the past 18 to 24 months. It simmered down. Could it spark back up again? Yes, it could. Unfortunately, it's the same situation as there was up here in Baltimore. You just don't know. But unlike Baltimore, in D.C., you're going to have the benefit of being able to actually see if a demonstration is happening that day, where it is, what the closures are, so you won't be surprised. So that's another thing for you to look out for. So yeah, there's that. So one of the last things in terms of demonstrations I wanted to talk about is that should a demonstration degrade into a riot or civil unrest, if something happens in your hotel, stay in your hotel. The hotels have procedures for this. They have a lockdown procedure. You will be safer inside your hotel than you would be if you were trying to get out of town. You will be safer in your hotel than trying to get out of town. Stay in the hotel. you will be safer. I cannot express that enough. And there's a reason for that, and when we get to transportation, because you're going to get nowhere real quick. So, if you're in the convention center and something happens, the convention center is one of those places that is built with civil unrest in mind. It's kind of like the BCC here in Baltimore, where it actually turns into a fortress should that happen and should the need arise. So again, if you're inside the convention center and there's a lockdown because stuff is going on outside, you are safer inside than you are outside. Stay inside the convention center. Stay inside the convention center. That's where you want to be. That's where you're going to be safest. Don't try to get out of town. Don't try to leave. There's a reason why that they can lock it down and keep you safe, because it literally turns into a fortress. Okay? And don't forget, not only do you have local police around you, you have federal agencies around you, and you have a Marine base at 8th and I. So there is that. So just sit tight should that unfortunate thing happen. But again, we don't know if that's going to happen or not. It will or it won't. And my guess is it won't, because I think we're heading in that direction where we're not necessarily past that, but I just don't think it's going to happen as much as it might have happened, say, a year ago. All right, so let's talk about some convention expectations. Okay, let's talk about some convention expectations. This is kind of sort of an odds and ends, kind of all over the map type of thing. Let's start with the fact that it's also going to be hot down in Washington, D.C. One of the things about Baltimore in July, particularly in July and in August, it gets really hot here. So, that's one of the complaints of Otakon of past years. Unfortunately, that is going to continue in Washington, D.C., if not worse. It's a little bit more humid down there than it is up here. So you're going to deal with that. Point being, hydrate. Drink your water. Not Coke, not soda, not coffee, not tea. Drink water. And lots of it. Because it is real easy to get dehydrated. And again, as I say, year after year after year, it would really suck if you're in cosplay, waiting in line outside, and suddenly you faint and you fall over, and the first thing everyone's going to do is pull out their phones, take pictures and video of you to put up on YouTube. Then they're going to help you. Okay? So we don't want that. You don't want that. Stay hydrated. And actually, if you are a cosplayer and you're dealing with a complex costume or something that is very heavy and it's going to trap a lot of heat to your body, I would strongly suggest that you not wear your cosplay until you get into the convention center. It's just going to make your life a lot better. So that means that you're probably going, wait a minute, does that mean that there's going to be lines? Oh yes, it's Otakon. It's Otakon. There's always lines at Otakon, no matter what. Okay? So for those of you who like to kvetch about the lines, I'm sorry to tell you this, there will also be lines this year. There will always be lines at Otakon, and particularly with the convention center, this particular convention center. The reason for that is because it is run just like the BCC, run by the city government, but they take their security very, 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 very seriously. It's Washington, D.C. It's the capital of the country. It is considered a soft target. There are actual action plans for the Marines in case something happens at the convention center and they need to respond. Yes, the United States Marine Corps. So you're going to have to go through those lines. You're going to have to open up your backpack. They're going to have to rummage through your backpack. So pay attention to what Otakon has to say in terms of what you're allowed to bring in, what you're not allowed to bring in. Okay? Make your life as simple as possible. Even with a badge, it's probably going to take you a little bit of time to get in, simply because you're going to have to go through bag checks. Okay? So, yes, there are going to be lines to get into the convention center, which is why a lot of people, once they get in, don't leave this particular convention center, unlike the BCC, because at the BCC, it was easy to get in and out because there were multiple entrances and exits. At the DC Convention Center, there aren't that many exits or entrances. There are plenty of exits, and they'll let you out, but you're not going to be able to come back in. Like, literally, if you walk out that door and that door shuts behind you, the security guard's on the other side, and you turn around, oh, can you let me back in? They're not going to. They're going to tell you to go back around. That's their job. So don't get mad at them. They're doing their job. Okay? As a matter of fact, in 2017, I asked a couple different guards, I said, what did you think of this? Because I noticed the higher security. And they literally looked at me and said, we don't understand what makes you guys think you can just walk around the place. Like, in and out, just willy-nilly. We don't understand that. Didn't you have security at the BCC? Literally, that's what they're saying to us. So it's not going to be like in the past. So if you're new to Otakon, get used to the lines, get used to this process. If this is something you deal with and you complain about, you can complain all you want. It's not going to do you a damn bit of good. I'm going to tell you that right now. Just make your line experience the best that you can make. So make sure you're hydrated, make sure that you follow the rules. Don't argue. Don't argue. Don't argue. You're going to lose. You're not right. You're going to be in the wrong. I'm sorry to tell you this, but that's just how it is. That's experience talking, okay? Just get through the line so you can get in, okay? So what are some other things that you can expect about the convention? One of the other things is actually talking about cosplay. If you are cosplaying a character that is sort of like an army or something that denotes a uniform, if you have a weapon, particularly one that looks like a long rifle, it would be in your best interest to change into your cosplay in the convention center. Don't go to the convention center looking like in camos and having a, your big long gun, like if you're from Helsinki and you have her like huge gun, like 50 cal rifle thing going on. Don't do that. You are being watched, okay? This is DC. This is the capital of America. You are being watched. Someone's paying attention to you at all times. If you look like you're wearing camo and you look like you're a militiaman, and most people can't tell the difference between a real and not real firearm, it's sad but true, they're going to call the police and say, we see this. So do not be surprised if you're walking around in camos, even if you don't have what looks like a weapon, walking around and you're in camos and an officer stops you. Do not be surprised and comply. There's no reason for you to argue. There's no reason to get, pull out your phone and go, what's going on here? And try to do a First Amendment audit. Don't do those things. Don't be a sovereign citizen. Don't do that stuff. If the officer asks you for your ID, just give him your ID. So they go, oh, okay, you're going to Otakon. Okay, gotcha. Okay, go along. Thank you. All right. And if you are carrying something that looks like a long rifle, they're going to have their hand on their sidearm when they approach you. So do not be surprised by that. Okay, that's why I'm telling you, do that inside. Break everything down. Take it with you. I know it's a pain. It's a pain in the butt. Fortunately, it's a large convention center, so you can find a corner to put everything together, go into a bathroom, put your stuff on, come out, and then do the pictures. Okay, you really, really need to pay attention and do it that way, and not be cosplaying with a huge ass rifle walking around the mall. Okay, you're inviting trouble when you do that. Not to mention if there's any like demonstrations that might be pro against gun rights, so you might get involved in that when you don't want to. So that's another reason. So just make sure that you do that kind of cosplay in the convention center. Difficult and stupid, I understand, but that's what you have to do. Okay, what are some other things that you should expect in the convention center? Inside the convention center, they like to keep things moving. So what does that mean? So when you come up to an escalator, don't stand in front of the escalator. Go down the escalator. Go up the escalator. Stand to the side of the escalator. Don't stand at the escalator, particularly with the dealer's room. They don't want people bunching up on that terrace because people do that so they can do like I usually do, which is take a pan picture of the dealer's room, because it's a kind of neat shot. But they want to keep people moving because they don't want anyone to bunch up, and that causes problems. So if they tell you to move, move. Just move. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Again, as a general answer to the question, will this be safe? For my kids, will this be safe for me? And the general answer is going to be yes. I mean, you just have to be, use your head, be aware of your surroundings, travel in groups, don't travel at night, don't give people money, and, just make sure that you enjoy the convention. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. If you were going to be fine up here in Baltimore, you're going to be fine down there. Trust me. In some respects, you might even be even safer down there in D.C. The convention center is actually a wonderful building, actually buildings. If this is your first time going there, you're going to love it. Trust me. I still want Otakon to come back to Baltimore. I do, because the convention center is literally only 10 blocks like that way. So it's always been convenient for me. But this is a wonderful place for Otakon. It's a good home, and I think you'll enjoy it. So yes, you're going to be safe. You're going to have a great time. Now, next week we're going to talk about transportation. What to do if you're taking a plane in. How you get in city. If you're driving, which is going to be most of you, if you're going to be driving to a hotel into the city, we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about, once you're inside the city, how do you travel? And I'm going to give you one major hint. If nothing else from all these videos that you take away this, and that is park your car, leave it there, and just use other modes of transportation, because driving in DC is a terror. It's horrible. It's a nightmare. I'll get into that later. And then, of course, in the week after that, we're going to talk about the food and where to find things, where is CVS and all that good stuff. So yeah. So I hope you find this informative. If you do have questions, leave them down below. Just let me know what you're thinking, what your concerns are. I'll try and answer them as best as I can. If you're seeing this off the Otakon message board site, again, leave a message down below, and again, I'll try and answer it as best as I can there, in those places, or maybe I'll put it up on the next few videos. Okay, so anyway, that's it. Again, if you're not vaccinated yet, try and get your vaccinations if you can. If your policy says to wear the mask, and social distance if you have to, because someday, we're going to see each other face to face. Someday I'll be at Otakon and I'll meet you at Otakon, or maybe Anymore, or some other convention. So anyway, I want you all to have a good time, and I will see you next week. Yeah, have a good one.